from our participants and will give us wide answer.
Good.
Okay, so let's start. And the first speaker, I think it's gonna be Kolodyuk.
Well,
Please.
I'm very honored to take this floor as the first one. And but because you mentioned that we have, it's also related to the new co-chair of the Invest in Ukraine committee, I would suggest, as the chairman of UVCA, of the board of UVCA, to give the floor to Vitaliy, also in his new capacity, and also maybe he will have something to tell to the members first, and to the audience today in the call. This is my suggestion to Dmitry and to Vitaliy, if you don't mind.
I accept this suggestion. And Vitaliy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
do you hear me well, guys?
Yes, and we can see you
loud and clear.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I think that those guys who joined, first of all, they would like to hear about UVCA and how it sees itself into the future. And well, I don't think I'm the best person to tell about this, but from the perspective of M&A and investment committee, maybe I will be a good fit. So UVCA, the mission of UVCA and how UVCA sees it is promoting Ukraine abroad. And while UVCA was focusing on venture capital market, now the idea is to lure into private equity market as well. And to do this, we need to do a good job. First of all, we need to have some systematic approach with all the contacts and all relationship that UVCA has during these years. It's not the secret that UVCA did a very good efforts in promoting Ukraine. For example, Ukraine House in Davos, or Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. So all this context and relationship should be managed, and the systematic approach of talking to them should be applied. And from my perspective, as a M&A consultant, with the experience that I have, I think we're a good fit to do it from the M&A perspective. So that's the idea. Well, before this event, I heard questions from market participants, from other investment bankers, what it will be, how it will work. And the idea is very simple. So we say that we have a leverage for the context and relationship. We need to do a systematic communication, and also we need to do it from the M&A perspective. The idea is that when members of UVCA have some certain task of contacting someone abroad, we have to help. And we want it to work. Does it make sense? Dima, maybe some more points that I shall cover?
No, I like your words.
Yeah.
Nothing to add.
Andrei?
Well, just support, because basically you already set up the conversation, because yes, since anticipation, UVCA not only was building the internal ecosystem, venture capital, private equity in Ukraine, but also been focusing on the external, meaning the co-investments into Ukraine and also exits, right? Basically, this is a two core interests, and also the general promotion of Ukraine. And you mentioned a few projects that we have done, ongoing projects that we have done numerous times in the past, like Ukraine House in Davos and CAS, etc., or numerous of road shows we've done, by the way, in the different countries, from the Silicon Valley to the Israel, to Hong Kong, to the many others. Basically, the idea is to UVCA to build the bridges, okay? Building bridges with global investors. The question is, so there is no doubt for any participants and for UVCA members that we're interested in co-investments and we're interested in the exits, right? Basically selling the companies in Ukraine or in our portfolio companies. This is our job. This is what we do. The question is how to, and basically this is what I would kind of put it on the floor for everyone to interfere in terms of how we can do this best, right? We are welcome to the new ideas, right? How to do it effectively, properly. That's the reason also for the call and for the committee, right? That Vitaliy took courage to lead. And basically, the question is how we all, as a members and not members of the UVCA yet, what can be done in order to attract the investors, strategic investors, or strategic buyers of our portfolio companies. This is basically the question is how, and you already started on this topic, and basically I guess that everybody is welcome, and on the UVCA part, the question is how we can assist, right? Because UVCA is the association of the members, and basically all initiatives that members have in mind, UVCA is an organization is obligated basically to support. So basically the initiative comes from the members. It's up to us what we want to do, and the rest we are using each of our resources in order to achieve our common goals.
Let me interrupt you. I'm so sorry, but does it mean you take your word now, or you will let Vitaliy to proceed?
No, it's okay. Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry if I ruin moderator.
I'm a cruel moderator, so I will stop you at once.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Vitaliy, please tell us about simple things. First of all, what are the tasks of the Invest in Ukraine Committee in terms of investment and M&A agreements? And what can you tell about investment and M&A activity in Ukraine in 2020, please?
Yeah. Okay. If we separate these two things, so the first, what we would like to start with in investment committee. First of all, we need to do the term is stock take or inventorization of all these contacts and relationship you have, and all these partners, such organization as UVCA in Europe and other countries, other geographies. That will be the task number one. Then we will see what we can build upon. Then what I would like to happen is that every member of UVCA will know that I'm a contact person inside the organization. If they want to approach with some investment thesis, to approach foreign investor, be it in Europe, be it in Asia, be it somewhere. And having this systematic approach, we will tell, okay, if you have an agricultural company, you're looking for a partner. From our context, we see that the good angle of attack will be this, this, and this. You need to do in such a format, you need to do a investment thesis to pitch. And then when the interest will come, you take the lead and you do whatever you want with it. So our idea is to have an instrument which works at all times. Then there is a point of contact which can respond to your kind of requirements, and to make it happen. Once the first thing happens, we will definitely tell about this, and this is our goal. Yeah.
Vitaliy, can I clarify something on what you just said?
Sure.
When you I understand that your point of contact, it's absolutely fine, but when you were referring to the to communication with you, that communication should you mean from the UVCA members, correct?
Right.
Or, okay, because the reason why I'm trying to clarify this is because UVCA also gets number of requests from the market participants in terms of, can you find investor, can you find the buyer? So we have this, how to say, not chaotic, but we have this not regular inbound communication to UVCA. And of course, UVCA always explaining that we are not in the position to give you any interest, any advice, whatever, and just talk to our members. So if you see any kind of help in communication from the market participants, they want to sell or attract investor, it also would help probably to Dmitry from the management perspective if you could address or find the forum how we can address that as well. That's why I just mentioned this one.
Okay.
So
yeah, okay. It is very fair. We're talking about UVCA now, and well, to exist and to deliver, well, UVCA needs to focus first of all on its members. Because, well, if you want to do something, you need to have a focus. So that's why, we're talking about the members and UVCA in the first thing. Sure. And addressing the second question about M&A market. Well, it's very, for me, it's very weird. So if we're talking M&A market globally, it's crazy. So there are postponed deals, interest rates are very low. There are tons of piles of money injected into economies, and the valuations are soaring high. So there is a huge M&A activity in the world. I was just looking at the statistics in the first month of 2021. There are 1.7 trillion in deals, in M&A deals, which is like 2 times higher than 4 months of 2020. Yeah, in April there was pandemic already, but still. And then we look into the perspective of Ukraine, and this is not yet happening. For me, the explanation is the following: is that huge yields and returns can be found on the developed markets or elsewhere on the domestic markets of investors. And now they are having such huge yields and huge opportunities, they are focused on there. Once it all calms down, then they will look at the emerging economies to get this high yields. Something that several outbound, if I may say so, funds told me is that, look, Vitaliy, we are in these realities, we need to focus on M&A in our domestic markets. They produce unseen yields. And also, if we even dig deeper into Ukraine, maybe we will focus on Eurobonds, warrants, or local bonds, because it's easier and they provide for a high yields. So at the moment, it's we were trying to be rivals with other markets, and it's not happening in our favor at the moment. But there is another coin of the story, is that we may have a look at the commodity markets, and they are soaring. Prices prices for metal all-time high. You cannot buy wood now in Ukraine because it's the price tripled, but still you cannot buy it. Critical materials. Now everybody is looking into critical materials such as, I don't know, beryllium, lithium, you named a few. And there is a huge scarcity in the world at the moment. Here, I think that we will see deals and we will see interest. I mean, in commodities, in the broader sense of it. I mean, food, agriculture, I mean, metal, I mean, wood, I mean, critical materials, I mean, brains. And this will start to happen, I guess. But if we're talking about 2020, the M&A markets in Ukraine was it was on the levels lower than 2019, and only several international investors came to Ukraine. DP World, Glencore, Poskodeo, and some other deals with Cyclone as well. But yeah, the idea is that there is a huge wave in globally, still not converted in Ukraine, and will be converting from the commodities perspective, I think. If that makes sense.
Thank you. And okay, a couple of questions. some of questions. They are related in part to your previous words. Once again, does it have any impact for Ukraine? I mean, this waiving the era of transition from a conditional COVID era to a post-COVID one. How does Ukraine feel? Can you tell us?
Well, I don't like to repeat myself, but in the short terms, commodities, and there is a postponed demand. There is breaks in logistic chains, soaring prices for commodities. That will be the interest of M&A markets in Ukraine. If we may see that that foreigners are opening like branches of factories here in Ukraine. For example, Kronospan, Head Fisher. So they're looking for wood here in Ukraine. This relates to semiconductors as well, and also outsourcing. I mean, every type of outsourcing. Immigrants, labor force, cheap labor force, IT engineers. That's what that will be drawing interest to Ukrainian targets, Ukrainian companies in 2021. I hope.
We all hope. Thank you. And Andrei, please, that's your time.
All right.
Tell us about exactly what is it, UVCA Association, its role and opportunities in promoting Ukraine's investment opportunities abroad, and what is going on investment market now, and what trends are there.
Okay, thank you, Dmitry. Well, I start with the trends because basically once we aware of the trends, then we'll see what should be our priorities and how we can address these trends in order to profit for them on the Ukrainian side. So despite of the COVID, despite or maybe because of, it doesn't matter, but I would say the window of opportunities have opened. I don't know for how long, but it's definitely the case. And I'm talking about the SPAC deals and the SPAC market. And of course, you probably heard of the numbers that are kind of the huge, that's more than $100 billion being raised in the SPACs. I don't know, for the sake of the audience, maybe I explain what it is just very shortly. SPAC is a special purpose acquisition company. Basically, it's a company that raises capital only with one purpose: to acquire the company, private company, and after the deal, that private company becomes the public one. Okay, and of course, I don't need to tell a lot about the liquidity on Ukrainian markets. I'm not going to touch the possibilities on the European markets. This is what was usually happened before. I'm talking about the Romanian stock exchange, or Warsaw, or London. I'm talking about the SPACs basically in US, and this is create the opportunity to first of all for M&A, number one, because the capital has been raised, and now they searching, and also in Ukraine they're searching for the good targets, private companies, and the upside here is enormous in terms of the current founders or current investors in the companies, because for pretty short period of time, okay, rather than trying to get listed, and you know that none of the Ukrainian companies listed in the US market. Well, that was previously one case, but I'm talking in the current situation. So they're not public ones. And of course, every investors and also founders working hard in order to get liquidity. So the SPAC now is an opportunity from the people that raise capital to find the targets. And I believe for many targets in Ukraine, it's a window of opportunities, and also for their investors to address this, because it's still a relatively new topic, number one. Secondly, I need to say on behalf of the UVCA members, a few of our members professionally involved in SPACs, and they have undergoing deals already. And I believe that UVCA members as well as UVCA can build the relationship with a number of those, because why? Because obviously the targets for SPACs are usually searched in US. However, we already seen the recent cases also in the CS market when the acquisition happened, also not in the Europe per se, right? I'm not gonna mention names, just for your knowledge. Virgin Galactic by Branson was also acquired by SPAC, okay? So even that guy could do the direct listing, but he chose to do the SPAC. And there are a number of deals from Western Europe. But I'm talking now even in the recent cases that happens in the CS market. There've been already, in my knowledge, 2 cases when the US company acquired the targets from our regions. And it's just the beginning, okay? So I'm telling you this in terms of trend. It's a window of opportunities. These investors already raised capital on the public market. This is what SPAC is all about. And this is the reason why they are looking for targets. And I'm sure we can build the communication bridges between our members and also the SPAC investors in order to do the M&As, because they are very good companies, private one, with the global revenues and with global ambitions out of Ukraine. And this is a good opportunity and good target for the stockholders to consider. So this is my message, and the question is how to build this, because it's already happening between our members, to my knowledge. The question is how to raise awareness between the Ukrainian companies, number one. Secondly, how to basically get in touch with the good ones. Not only, of course, we can do it one by one, right? This is what usually we do, right? But as in previously UVCA done, when we invited a number of the foreign investors as a group or separately, it also could be the case how we can, how to say, speed up or how we can help this communication happening, and to show also to the Western or you can say US investors that Ukraine even is a place to look for such a good private companies, because it's also of course we are internally do our best to promote the Ukrainian origin companies globally. This is what we do, right? But if you ask in US if they ever consider the look at the Ukraine, they would say no. Okay, in 99% cases. So the question is how to change that perception and also to show them practical deals from our region, and this would help to facilitate this two-way communication. That's it on this topic, and this is probably the main one. I don't want to take time from the other speakers today, and I would be happy to answer the questions.
Anyway, I've got a couple of tricky questions for you, Andrei. Okay, tricky. I like it. First of all, the question I personally heard a lot of times: how is the UVCA related to M&A transactions or private equity transactions? Because everyone knows that UVCA it's about IT business. Okay. Well, you see, it's very simple. If you look at the base of our 50 members, you will see, first of all, and historically, and even now, you see the private equity funds, okay, including Horizon Capital, including the new players that just recently joined, okay. I believe that you could also say a few words about our newcomers that joined UVCA from the private equity and M&A side. So there are a number of the people that are involved in this. However, it's true that because of the venture capital, it's true that venture capital, the majority of that capital goes to the technology sector. That's correct, right? But UVCA is an investors organization, and that means that all investors are welcome, regardless if they invest in real estate or they invest in energy or they invest in the agriculture. So it doesn't matter by design of our organization. So and this is the answer. Why the perception is like that, I already explained to you, because it's venture capital.
It is technology investments, that's for sure. However, if you look at the UVCA membership, you will see that we have investors that are doing so-called seed investors, or even a few angel investors, but also you see the funds that invest in the round B and more. So basically, we have the number of the different investors that invest in different phases or different rounds, which is a good kind of cover up when in one organization, basically the investor also talking between each other because they're interested to attract, and this happened many times. I believe that Horizon can confirm that he invested in the rounds, but the origination came from the members, included AVentures, but and from other ones. And then Horizon was invited to invest in them, and the same implies to the other private equity funds like Dragon Capital, like other ones. So that's the answer. So we are investors organization, regardless of the sector, regardless of the size of the investments, and this is what makes us stronger, because we are doing syndicates, we are as members, we are sharing deals, and we are looking at the originations of the deals, and so on and so on. In short.
Thanks. And final question. I am sure you know the answer. Can startups become part of big corporations through M&A deals?
Well, I would be interested to hear the Vitaliy on the topic, okay? But basically, of course, let's put it this way. Of course, there are different types of the merger and acquisition. And of course, the startups in the early stage, we call it acqui-hiring type of deals, when basically acquirer is interested in buying the technology, or sometimes even the people, okay? And just I just give you the recent example when the Apple very quietly done a numbers of the acqui-hiring deals. So basically, they do this without any PR, without nothing. So answering your question, if startups on the early stage could be acquired, the answer is yes. And in many cases, just because if they have a technology, or even they have the unique qualification of the founders or the people working for their startups, yes, the number of deals that happened even before in Ukraine, just probably you forgot, but Microsoft also bought a few companies historically, just in a acqui-hiring type of way, okay? So I'm not even talking about the recent one. So always, I would say, once you started the company, it's also always the opportunity for M&A during the lifetime of the company, okay, always.
Thank you so much.
By the way, it's just a quick suggestion, because on what they just said, and that means that UVCA could also should share knowledge, okay, how to get prepared for M&A, okay, what should be done in order to be ready for M&A. So I believe it's our task as a members also to share this knowledge. If you would support my suggestion, we would definitely need to understand how we can address this and how to share that knowledge with the market, with the founders, etc.
I think Vitaliy knows the answer for this one suggestion. Okay, thank you. And please welcome Dmitry Borodai, Horizon Capital. Dmitry, you tell us about M&A trends and prospects of investment activity in Ukraine, for example, 2021 and subsequent years, from the point of view of large players, large market players. And maybe you may share with us some practical cases of Horizon Capital deals.
Sure, Dmitry, thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure actually to see so many participants at this panel, and it really shows that there is actually a lot of interest in what's happening in the M&A and investment space in Ukraine. I'll actually be speaking. I will be building up on a lot of points that were raised earlier by Vitaliy and by Andrei. Talking about the trends which we see now in the market. It's actually very important to go back into the context which we had just prior to COVID-19, right? and specifically related to Ukraine. Ukraine actually had a good momentum in 2018 and 19 in terms of the M&A activity. We really saw returning of interest from large international investors, both strategic and financial investors in the Ukraine market. There were done some of the largest transactions since 2014 were done in 2019. So we really, entered the 2020 in a very good momentum. Yet the COVID-19 happened. It obviously put a lot of M&A processes on hold, given the uncertainty globally, given the huge uncertainty which we had in Ukraine. And what we basically were seeing now is the return by many of the players which were looking actively at Ukraine in 2018 and 19. Now they're returning back to this market as the fundamentals are quite strong for this country. It still is a large market which offers good growth opportunities at a very reasonable valuations. So there are not that many markets in the world which have a large enough size and offer these fundamentals. So we actually look with quite a lot of optimism for the year ahead and for the future years. And this is what we can see from the conversations which are happening with various market players, the return of the interest. In terms of the global context, what is happening, really the M&A activity at the record high levels. We have seen a very strong rebound in the second half of the year. It was obvious globally. Unfortunately, it wasn't kind of reflected in Ukraine to the same sense it was reflected, in Western Europe or Central Europe. Actually, 2020, based on the numbers, it was, very difficult year for Ukraine's M&A market. The values were down like twice or even more. Yet it's recovering quite rapidly. And what's driving this is, of course, the record amounts of cash which strategic have on their balance sheet, a lot of dry powder by the private equity fund. There is really a scarcity of good investment opportunities. And with this scarcity, people expand their investment horizon and start looking even into some exotic geographies, which unfortunately Ukraine is considered by many of the developed market investors. I think one of the trends which we're seeing and what helps Ukraine is the way strategics and actually financial investors approach M&A transactions now. This has been really a big shift over the last 12 months. If before, to pursue large transactions, people would usually fly in, have long, extensive due diligence processes with a lot of people on the ground. With the new reality, with the Zoom becoming kind of the basic means of communication now, it actually helps to do cross-border transactions. The barriers to pursue a deal in Ukraine from Western Europe or for a US strategic has been significantly reduced because, they do transactions. This is how they do their domestic transactions. Doing another deal in Ukraine, they pretty much apply the same approach. They would hire a local reputable financial or tax advisor to consult them on the deal, and they can do most of the diligence via Zoom. And that actually helps in terms of the timing of transactions. We do see that the periods to close the transactions have been narrowing. So this is clearly which I think will help Ukraine's M&A market. And the second aspect is, of course, the sectors which we're strong in. So Ukraine is very strong in tech and IT and the telecom sector, and these are global companies. So they're not being considered as a pure Ukrainian targets with all the domestic risks which are inherent to a target in Ukraine. So having this strong focus by strategics and by financial investors to invest in tech-enabled businesses, Ukraine has a lot of great targets to offer. And we just need to market them properly and show great success cases of Ukrainian companies conquering and showing great exits.
I'm delighted with your words. Thanks. And I have a couple of questions. Also tricky questions as usual. First question. The fund's operating model implies that Horizon Capital enters international markets 2 times. first during fundraising and then during the exit of the investments. And the first stage, it's a lot of work. It's less in tens of months. In the first case, you collect commitment from the future limited partners. And then in second case, you go to strategists who may be interested in your portfolio companies. The question is, it's regarding to the first part of the question. The current world reality is how good or how bad is the interest to Ukraine, especially to investment thesis from potential investors from the US and Europe? That's the first question.
Yeah, let me address it. Look, it's not a big secret that Ukraine's perception among institutional investors is not great, and there is unfortunately a reason for this, because if you look at the past 15 years, among foreign investors, more investors have lost money than made money in Ukraine. And unfortunately, it's quite difficult to convince someone who has had a bad investment experience in Ukraine to return to this country, against this backdrop and against kind of all the news flow which is happening in Ukraine. That said, we are successful in terms of fundraising. There are a number of other investors and funds who are successful in fundraising, and I think collectively we can make it even a bigger success and attract more capital. I think the winning formula here is really just showing the track record of what can be achieved, what kind of returns can be achieved in Ukraine, and what kind of companies can be built out of Ukraine. And if you look at the past, couple of years, there has been a number of these success stories where large technological companies with deep roots in Ukraine, have established themselves, and they actually attracted a lot of institutional capital from North America and Western Europe. I think the more cases we'll have like this, the cases of Grammarly, Genesis, AirSlate, Ajax, the easier it's going to be to raise capital, because eventually it's all driven by the word of mouth and the level of trust which institutional investors have. If they will have seen more success cases than the failures in Ukraine, we will be able to attract more and more capital.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. Actually, if you may disclose some secrets, what tools does Horizon Capital use in order to reach big strategic investors, to interest them and ultimately turn the conversation to a specific process? Maybe you can tell us a little.
Yeah, there's no great secret out of this. We just select the greatest assets and make them even greater. So we take a very rigorous approach in terms of which companies we back. We're really looking for market leaders and for the companies which have defensible and quite clear competitive advantages in their niches, and they're run by very strong founders and management teams with whom we have aligned interest. So I guess the most difficult and the most kind of important part of our work is really having a very rigorous approach to the selection of investment targets. We have, a lot of experience with this. We have our ups and downs, successes and failures. We have learned quite a lot what kind of targets are our type of targets, what works well for our fund, and what actually we should pass on. And it may be a great investment for another fund, but it's just not our type of deal. But then, of course, we take a very serious approach in terms of how we can make those great companies even greater. And we always start with the end in mind. So whenever we make an investment, we understand that our typical investment horizon would be something about 5 years. And from day one, we already have a plan of how are we gonna exit this business, and how are we gonna make it even more exitable and kind of raise the investment attractiveness of this business. And again, we have quite a lot of experience in this field because, we pride ourselves for exiting our assets to Western strategics, making IPOs of our company, selling to institutional investors like private equity funds. So we know what they look for. We know what are the most important elements of their due diligence. We know what gets them excited about targets in Ukraine. And this is the focus of our team, together with the founders of the management teams, to make sure that these strategically important elements, which investors would care about, that they're, first of all, they're visible enough. They're visible enough, and we communicate it in a very clear way. And here, it starts very basic from that. You need to, usually what people are getting excited about is the market positions, number one or number two player. What is the market share, and how were you able to retain or grow this market share? What's your kind of, financial historical growth, and what else can you achieve? Because every investor who would look at the target, he still wants to ride the wave of future growth. And of course, there's a lot of work happening in terms of making the companies IPO ready or ready for a Western strategic. So having the proper internal controls, having Big Four audited, having independent board members with very strong reputation and strong input which they can provide, and just having very strong corporate governance, which is becoming increasingly important to be able to sell the companies.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, you missed one little point. Tell us about any of your finished or closed deals. The latest one, maybe, if it's possible, and if you do not break the NDA.
Look, I would rather wait, and to make it kind of more to stimulate the participation in ongoing meetings of Invest Ukraine, so that people show up. Let me leave it for the next discussions, because I hope we'll have more interesting exits down the road. We have sold a lot of assets in 2019. We actually did a large exit to a Western strategic in 2020, but I'm sure we'll have much more exciting deals down the road.
Okay, we will wait. Anyway, thank you. And actually, we have one question from the audience. Maybe you may answer it. At what particular stages of companies are you investing in? Pre-seed, seed, Series A, etc. Short question.
Yeah.
Short
Thank you for the question. Look, we first of all, we're a growth equity fund, private equity fund. So we really look at the companies which, on the one hand side, show a robust growth potential. So, we're not doing LBOs. We're looking at really high growth companies. At the same time, they already need to have a proven business model. So we would not take a risk of earning a 100x return, which would a typical VC investor look like. We would be comfortable with lower return profile, at the same time, minimizing the downside risk. So this is kind of the trade-off which we're having. Hence, it's not really accurate to talk about the stages in a traditional VC sense of word. We would not do seed and early stages of the investment, but it doesn't make sense. We're not talking about round A or round B. What's important is that the company still needs to have a strong growth potential. It has to have a proven business model. So we need to understand that it is working, it is viable, and we understand what are the competitive advantages. And then it needs to have a large enough market and a strong management team to capture that market share in the market. So these are the key elements which we look in our deals.
Okay, thank you. That's enough for you for now, I guess. And now, the greatest role to finish our pitch line goes to Max Filippo. Let me introduce you again. You are a managing partner at UVCA Capital, and you have great experience in international investment. I guess you're gonna tell about yourself by yourself. Okay.
Thank you, Dmitro. Do you hear me well?
Please, about global M&A and investment trends. Maybe a couple of words, and once again, your practical cases on the example of the latest, your practical cases, or maybe global practical cases on the example of latest major transactions.
Okay, we'll try to. So, hi everyone, and thanks for inviting in the first place. It's my first appearance in the UVCA in general, and probably on Ukrainian panel about M&As in particular. I'll let myself explain a bit from which perspective are we looking at the global trends. So actually, when Dima was just recently telling about their strategy of Horizon Capital, it resembled a lot with what we tell about us, but we also include stages of VC investment there. So we do late stage as well. It's not growth private equity, which is usually quite later, but we also look for proven business models. And that's actually why 5 years ago, when we were starting a fund, we knew that there are already some prominent guys like Andrei with AVentures and lots of others, which I will not mention right now, who already look at seed stage, at early stages in Ukraine. So we found this niche to invest first in the late stage, which was not the product available for our investors at all in Ukraine, but also to look for these proven business models abroad, because literally in Ukraine, the number of late stage investments in tech is very much limited. And second thing, we also didn't see what added value we can bring there. So with this in mind, after 5 years, we have invested in 15 companies in Western Europe and the US. Usually this is Series B or C. Usually those are the companies with revenues of already more than 10 million or sometimes even 100 million per year. But still, they are considered venture companies because they are built on tech and they are attracting lots of money to grow further. So from this perspective, I can actually say that lots of trends were already highlighted by other members here. So first of all, for the last couple of years, the money was virtually unlimited for good venture companies. And this was happening already before COVID, but after the pandemic struck, governments didn't see any other options just to fuel, just to add some fuel to this fire with some additional money printed through stimulus checks and through support of different industries. But from the other perspective, the companies became even more scarce. I mean, the late stage companies which are interesting to invest in. Why? Because actually COVID has highlighted from one side problems in the companies which could somehow survive before this, but during COVID it became apparent that they wouldn't succeed. From the other hand, those companies which survived COVID, even going out of it even better than they were before, they became like more evident and more easily findable. Let's call it like that. So in general, the situation in the companies, even from our portfolio, is that the usual oversubscription for the round is like 3-5x from what the company is originally planning to raise. It's a very interesting time in the market, and actually the exit environment also became even more fruitful for these companies. And for the last year, we actually have seen all three usual suspects for exits. I mean, one of our companies exited through M&A, the other company exited through SPAC, which Andrei mentioned today. And the third company did a classic IPO, but also with some interesting elements in it. So in this sense, I really agree that Ukrainian companies should also start considering, I'm not saying like exit in the next year, but just they need to understand the situation globally and position themselves right for these trends, which are, again, quite unlimited supply of money, lots of funds with dry powder overhand, which they don't know where to invest, lots of interest from retail investors in the public markets, which make exits through SPACs or through IPOs even more profitable. And also another trend is actually that, which Vitaliy already highlighted as well, is that Ukraine, despite all of the things we all know, which make us not very interested as a country for investments, still is becoming more interesting. Why? Because, like members mentioned, there are the possibilities to invest are becoming more scarce, and the people are still looking for nice returns. And there are some movements in Eastern Europe, especially IPO of UiPath, company from Romania, and some other examples from Turkey and from Poland, which may, and including some examples from Ukraine, including Preply and Ajax and some other companies. So I can confirm that despite we don't look into Ukrainian market per se from our fund, we get lots of questions from our co-investors and partners in Europe in terms of where are the companies. You show us at least some target. And I guess some work really needs to be done by UVCA and in general by ecosystem members. First, to help these companies grow, to help them internationalize, to help them become more obvious as an investment for foreign investors, and then we will see a really big inflow of capital into our country as well. Well, in general, that's it. Another trend which I also thought about when hearing other members was actually how all of this becoming more and more online. So the borders mean less and less these days. Two of our recent transactions, already even three, we have done purely online. So German, British, French companies, before COVID, they were kind of suspicious when Ukrainian investor came to their country looking for some opportunities to invest. Nowadays, it's not a question anymore. You have just online presence, you have your brand, you have your English, and you can contact with whoever you want. So in this sense, again, this is a favorable trend for Ukraine. If we somehow think of how to make physical borders less scary, and by this I mean some national bank regulations in terms of investments and all the other problems we have. So online borders are already driven down, and it doesn't mean anything anymore. Well, and also interesting thing again, which I thought about while listening to other members, is that actually there is no difference between, there is less and less difference between late stage venture capital and late stage private equity funds these days. One of our deals got investment from classical private equity fund, Warburg Pincus, and I guess Dima can confirm that nowadays the company which is not employing the technology, even at some part of their business, is probably not the best company to invest in long term. So I guess, like Andrei mentioned, UVCA probably should rename not into Ukrainian Venture Capital Association, but just Ukrainian Investment Association, something like that, because all of us gathered here have already some topics to discuss, which was not the case 5 years ago. So those are my points. We'll be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you. I guess Andrei is writing down your suggestion about renaming.
We can do another committee on that.
You said it. You said it. Okay. Let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, also a tricky question. They say being absorbed, this is the end of your business. How do you think? M&A, is this the end for the business, or it's a new, I don't know, a new history, a new way for both sides?
Well, if by absorbing, as I understand, it means acquisition of the business by some bigger player, yeah. So I would say it all depends very much on the conditions, and that's why guys like Vitaliy earned their bucks, because the deal terms is the key here. We have seen our exit as an M&A in Germany, and well, I would say that the management is more happy than not happy. There are some parts which they don't like. It's a lockup for key management players in new company which acquired them. for some years. So it's not like the dream job, it's just the job you are actually assigned, and you need to do it. Otherwise, you will lose your potential bonuses or whatever. But from the other perspective, actually M&A is just another, I would say, another level of the development of your company. I also talked to Yuri Zaremba just recently. He's the founder of AX Draft. I don't know if they're members or if anybody knows them, but it's a Ukrainian startup, which after successfully finishing Y Combinator was in some time acquired by a bigger player in this field. So he actually is waiting for this lockup to end to start his new business and to start something new. But he wouldn't be able to do this without this M&A, because the other way, if there is no M&A, if there is no IPO, if there is no next round, then your company dies, because it's usually a loss-making company in venture. So I wouldn't look at M&A as the death of your company. Yeah, some things will change. It's like growing up, you know, when you leave university and you go into real life, probably some things are not that pleasant as they were when you were staying at your parents' house or whatever. Just make an example here. But definitely it's a new opportunity, and it's actually an exit. So it's something each and every entrepreneur strives for at some point. But I would confirm that the most ambitious of our founders, they still want to do an IPO in the first place. So for them to stay in control of their company is crucial, and to lead it even after the liquidity event for the investors is something they would want to achieve. But we all know IPO windows, they come and go. So it all depends also on the market conditions. And actually in Europe, M&A is probably like by far the first way to exit the venture company. I guess like 90%, 95% of exits happen through strategic acquisitions.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, one more question. It's about the case when some big corporation acquires a number of companies. Isn't it a direct path to monopoly? And maybe you may tell us about how governments limit these efforts.
Well, actually it is. I mean, if you want to build a monopoly, then you probably need to kill, or I don't know, I'm just joking, but basically to win competition from other players so they exit the market, or to acquire them on this market. And this is the job of our and each country's anti-monopoly committee to track that. Actually, there was a case there where even without M&A, like our portfolio company Deliveroo got investment. They're British, and they got investment from Amazon. So they signed everything, but then anti-monopoly committee of the UK, they postponed the transaction for 1.5 years while they were doing their own investigation on this, because they saw it as potentially a concentration. Despite Amazon didn't get controlling stake, they just got some 10+% of the company. Still, that was considered a threat. Despite the market is so competitive, and that even investment from Amazon wouldn't decide anything there. Actually, the transaction was approved after all, but just to highlight the real case. So generally, it is actually a way to build a monopoly, and that's why big tech companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, and others, which literally can buy anything in this world, I guess, they are under very big, like Big Brother's eye. So in the US, they already are usual suspects for some committee hearings for their over exaggerated market control. So we just need to create more new interesting startups and ventures to just not let those big guys control all of our world, and that's probably the only way.
Yep, I'm agreed. Thank you for such a detailed answer. And actually, that's it for now. Maybe our audience or our speakers have any additional questions. Please we're ready to hear it. Okay. Andrei?
Oh, well. No, I don't have anything to add. I'm just waiting if there are any questions from you, from the audience.
Okay. So in this case, I'm going to finish our great meeting. I'd like to thank to all of our speakers. And once again, actually, I'd like to give final word to Andrei to tell about UVCA once again.
Well, I don't want to finish with a final word, but at least today's discussion was very fruitful, and I believe that you noted a few good suggestions and the ideas from our members. I would appreciate, Dmitry, if you send to our members the follow-up. Basically, it will help to, first of all, to start implementing some of them, at least trying to discuss further, because, you know, I'm a very practical man in terms of, I'm interested always to have takeaways that we have built something, concrete actions as a members. It's obvious that we have aligned interest, at least we heard today. The cooperation between our members could be fruitful for everyone. The question is how we can raise the efficiency of that for M&A's sake, and what we can do together, and also with UVCA help as well. So I'm interested in that continuing practical discussion based on the takeaways and suggestions that we have discussed today. Thank you for everyone, and I pass the word for the other ones to conclude or tell their feelings.
Thank you. Yes, for sure, we are preparing a minute of meeting, if I can say so. And we will proceed our discussions about investments, about M&A deals. Some interesting events are already prepared for UVCA members. And we will keep in touch and tell to everyone when and where we will be glad to see them. Okay, for now that's all. Once again, thanks a lot for your attention, for your time, and I hope we will see you again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dima.